I'm here with Adam Savage. He is the co-host of MythBusters and the new show, which is he's also a co-host of Savage Builds, and author of Every Tool's a Hammer, the great new book about creativity and making and all that great stuff. So happy to be here with you.
Thanks for having me.
So Adam, we've talked about this, about perfection. It gets in the way of our creativity. How do we move away from perfection and actually start to build something?
I actually address this directly in the book. We deal with perfection with deadlines. I'm a big believer in deadlines, and it's often something that when you're starting your working life, especially when you're in film or theater, there's never enough time to make anything, and it's a constant complaint among the people who are doing the work. There's just not enough time to get this done. But I submit that deadlines are phenomenal ways to cut through. I say in the book, they prune the branches of your decision trees. And they force you, deadlines force you to ask yourself with each thing that you're doing, is this part of the essence or is it ancillary? And if it's not part of the essence, you can start chopping it off as that deadline gets closer and closer, because you're only trying to get that thing out that is like an arrow. So I don't over-labor myself with perfectionism. But if I have an unlimited amount of time, I will take an unlimited amount of time. So I have found frequently for builds of mine, like replicating the spacesuit from Alien, I sort of noodled along with that project for more than a decade until realizing I'm never going to finish this unless I give myself a deadline. So I chose Comic-Con, San Diego's Comic-Con, and I finished it. I gave myself 4 months to finish it by Comic-Con, and I was able to do it. And I did cut some corners here and there. None that anybody but me would notice, but that was required.
And what's your biggest source of creativity?
It's everything that I take in. It's television, it's books, it's radio, it's podcasts, it's good conversations around a dinner table.
What types of people bring out your creativity? Who do you want to surround yourself with?
The people that I call friends, the people that I spend my time with are so varied. But I think if there's a unifying feature, it would be open-mindedness. It would be a desire to learn from what's going on. I value my friendships as places to go and talk about not only just the details of our lives, but also to have those wonderful discussions about what our work means to us. And to me, being open to the next challenge is a key part of being a creative person.
What do you recommend to people who are in non-creative jobs that have the urge to be creative and produce something?
That's such an interesting question, a non-creative job. I mean...
Like if you work on Wall Street.
Okay, I'm not sure that's not a creative job. I'm not positive. I haven't done it for a living, but I would imagine that, where everyone is looking in the same direction, there's value in trying to look at a slightly shifted perspective, and that a lot of success comes from shifting your perspective, and that's really what creativity is. It's about taking in the stuff that's around you and trying to see if something piques your attention. I say a lot of the creative things that I get into, because I build in all sorts of different media, is about smoothing down the bumps. Like, I don't know necessarily how to play the guitar, but I know when it sounds bad, and I know how to practice. And so as long as I practice enough to remove all the bad parts, hey, I'm playing the guitar. I don't mean to reject the premise of your question. There are certainly people that feel that their job affords them no line of creativity. And when I was confronted with those jobs as a late teenager in my early 20s, I had the incredible grace and privilege of parents that were willing to cover me for a month while I looked for a different job. I was able to quit jobs I didn't like and go look for jobs I did. That was a crazy amount of privilege they gave me to do that. People who don't have such a luxury, I always think that the real creativity lies in those things that you can't not pay attention to. So for me, I'm attracted to objects and props from movies and from history, and so I seek to replicate those. That burgeoned into a love of costume and transformation, and so I seek to do that. A lot of people, let's say somebody works at Wall Street and they don't feel their job gives them any creative output, but they might be thinking, I'd really like to paint these specific figurines from some franchise I'm interested in. But that's weird, and I don't want to waste my time doing that. This whole book was written as a permission slip to go do that. Because when you start to indulge in those things, when you start to indulge in those weird, useless hobbies, and all of our hobbies are weird, when you indulge them, you learn about yourself. And that's never a net loss. That is always a gain for you.
Yeah, and you've interviewed a lot of people for this book, and you've met so many people throughout your career in TV and all sorts of mediums. Who has been like an inspirational figure to you?
I'm inspired by everybody who's busting their ass to make the stuff that they can't not make.
Is it empathy because you can relate to them because you busted your ass?
There's empathy, there's jealousy, the things people get to build that I would love to build, about the collaborations people explore that I'd love to try. There's, whenever someone's really exploring something passionate to them, and I read about it and I see it, it makes my hands itch. It makes me want to work. That's a universal thing. Whenever I read someone talking about making, it makes me want to get to making. So that's what I hope people take away from this. That's the best compliment I can pay to something, is that it makes me want to get started on something.
Do you believe that you have to fail many times at something, process of creating a business, creating anything, before you succeed? Do you think there's no success without failure?
Yes. And I think the word failure is the wrong word. But I'll put it to you this way. Have you ever met someone who doesn't think that they've ever failed? Were they remotely bearable to spend more than 10 seconds in the presence of?
No.
No, I don't trust people whose personality hasn't been given the tonic of abject destruction. It shapes us. It's a crucible that forms us. We talk about failure a lot. In Silicon Valley, it's a buzzword. We have to build fast and break things. And in education, we talk about helping kids learn how to fail. We don't really mean failure. We mean iteration. And failure is a good word, because iteration is a tougher word. Failure is a great word. It catches your attention. But failure is, my example is, failure is getting drunk and forgetting your kid's birthday party. Like, that's failing. That's screwing up. What we mean when we say failure is, as you travel down a path, there's going to be a lot of forks on the road. And many of the forks you're going to take when you reach them are going to be the wrong forks. And you'll have to backtrack and proceed up the right one. It is a journey in every sense of the word. And in the same way that a journey along a road requires wrong turns in order to figure out the right map, so does every journey of self-discovery, every journey of exploration. And I want to make it clear, when I say making, I don't just mean the physical making of things, even though that's my bailiwick. Making is poetry, it is dressmaking, it is building tables as well as building buildings. And it may be building the algorithms with which Wall Street combs through its data. Making is any time you reach out to make something out of your own head. I know we all stand on the shoulders of giants. We are part of a culture, so this stuff comes through us, whether we're reading Vonnegut or watching Beyonce or listening to Rachel Maddow on a podcast, and we recapitulate that stuff through what we make. I know my hobby of making props and costumes is weird, but I am also, in a sense, recapitulating my culture, which is all any artist seeks to do.
Do you feel like we have to experiment and try different things? Like, you don't know if you're going to be good at playing the guitar unless you play the guitar. You don't know if you can make a mask for Star Wars or a film unless you actually try and attempt to do that. Do you think that you have to experiment with various things before you choose what you should focus your time on?
I think, yes, we have to experiment, and I don't think we necessarily have to choose what we have to focus on. I also don't necessarily even think that there's a choice about what you focus on. I mean, of course, we have a choice where to put our energies, but so often someone might be interested in a hobby they think is too weird for them to jump into, or that feels like the arc of success is too long. Like, I'm not going to ever learn French or something like that. And the answer to me is just start. You know, I love the idea of taking things one day at a time. Just this day, I'm going to play the guitar this evening for an hour because it feels good, and I'm going to try and do that again tomorrow night. Today, I'm going to meditate in the morning and the evening, and I'm going to try and do that tomorrow. And each time we put a value on those things, we increase we give it more, every time we tell the universe that something has a value, that value pays us back. And when I say tell the universe, I mean ourselves. I think there is some, I'm agnostic, but I think there is somebody watching, and I've concluded that it's me. I'm paying deep attention. Even the watcher of the watcher is paying attention. And I can build the banks of my creative output by listening.
Has social media enabled us to become creators more, or create more often?
I think social media is a double-edged sword. I think in one sense it is an absolute cesspool. I think, you know, as a cisgendered white male, Twitter is pretty great for me. For many of the women that I know, work with, and call colleagues and friends, it is an absolute hate-filled cesspool. They have a completely different reality with that than I do. That being said, it's never been a better time to go find your wonderful, weird peer group who shares the same passion that you do. I mean, there's a joke about the internet, Rule 34, that if it exists, there is pornography of it. And it's a funny joke, but I also think it betrays a delightful and important deep truth. I would have loved to have YouTube when I was a young maker, helping me figure out how to work with molding and casting materials, or playing around with EVA foam and hot glue. I would have loved to have these resources of social media to be able to express some weird opinion and find someone else goes, I like that too, and then you figure out that you've got some soulmate in the thing that you're fascinated by, and they might be halfway across the world, but the fact that you can converse with them about this shared passion fills you with joy.
And there's a renewed sense of being a creator now, being a maker with a do-it-yourself generation, right? Well, and I think that's a really positive thing. What do you think?
I think it's an incredibly positive thing. Look, do-it-yourself has always been around. It has come in waves, and I feel like where we're going right now with DIY is similar to where we were in post-World War II car culture. We had a brand new middle class, we had a lot of people with some disposable income and some time, and they realized that these vehicles they were driving around were not black boxes, that they were actually, you could open them and you could change them and you could take them apart and put them back together in new ways. And kids these days are discovering that with electronics. They're discovering that with 3D printers, they can build the part that connects their Lego to their Kinects to their Duplo blocks. They can manipulate the world, and we're calling it rapid prototyping right now, but it's very soon going to be rapid manufacturing. And if we carefully train a generation of digital natives to use these technologies, we will be the better for it. And unfortunately, we're not doing that evenly. I mean, as William Gibson says, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed.
And what keeps you motivated? Like, what keeps you to keep writing, doing a book and having multiple shows? What keeps you going?
I love to and must tell stories all the time. I think humans are tool makers and we're storytellers. I think these are the
Do the tools have the stories? Or the stories?
We tell stories with the tools, and we make tools from the stories. It is this virtuous cycle. I think that we invented language in order to put the things we know in context and understand deeper things. And I learned, I went through many iterations in the 14 years I was making MythBusters as to what my job was. I thought, oh, I'm here to build stuff. I'm here to, oh, right, I'm also here to talk about the stuff that I built. Oh, right, I'm here to actually conduct experimental methodologies. Oh, actually, I'm here to test and conduct experimental methodologies and come to conclusions. And then around 2007, I was being interviewed by Neil deGrasse Tyson.
That's great.
And I was watching him go, and I was thinking, look at this guy. He is a machine for communicating his love of science. His whole life is an arrow pointed at this goal. What a thrill to be in the presence of this great science communicator. I would love to have a go. Oh, wait, I am a science communicator. And I realized, oh, I'm a science communicator. And then a couple of years later, I realized even more than that. I'm a storyteller. And in fact, I've explored deeply down the path of art, I've explored deeply down the path of commerce, and deeply down the path of science. And I find that everything is storytelling. It happens to be that art is arguably the more emotional type of storytelling, where science is arguably the more rigorous one, but they both traipse deep into each other's territory, and that's a benefit. I also think, you know, we're talking about creativity. The other thing I learned on MythBusters was that science is a deeply creative enterprise, and I don't think we teach that at all. I don't think culturally we understand how deeply creative the formulation of a hypothesis can be, and the development of a rigorous methodological approach to come to a conclusion about something. And if we did, I think we would have more scientists. We would be giving our young scientists, because every child is a natural scientist, we would be giving them a more proper encouragement. That's why the A belongs in STEAM.
And what's your best piece of career advice?
Best piece of career advice? Be nice to everybody. Honestly, I wanted to say he was nice to work with on my tombstone. I have had former assistants become bosses and hire me for jobs, and I have ended up hiring most of my former bosses for jobs. I cannot come up with a better argument to be graceful with everyone that you meet, with everyone that you work with, that life is too short to be an asshole.
Totally agree. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.